right, Russ Wilson, and he's going to be talking about Silvopasture.
Good morning. It's been a good summit, hasn't it? Very, very educational. Always enjoy it. Anyone here establishing silvopasture? Wanting to establish silvopasture? Lots of hands. What's one of the reasons you aren't establishing silvopasture? Money, cost. It's expensive.
Did you consider that silvopasture? I mean, that's what I have.
Yeah, that is actually integration of livestock into the woods. But there's two types of silvopasture. We'll talk briefly about into the woods, but we're going to talk about the other one more so. It's a deliberate integration of livestock in trees and grazing livestock of the animals onto the same land. Biodiversity, giving you a larger, making more money. Like Alan says, you're making more money per acre by doing this. This is my daughter's deer. She tells me that's her buck for the year, and my son's not allowed to shoot it, so we might get into a fight. But yeah, she's been watching this 4-point buck all year long, and that's her buck. One of the things with silvopasture is you should be trying to produce products short-term and long-term, and one of the problems that we have with silvopasture is the length of time it takes to get it established and see a return on your money. For me, silvopasture, if I were to do it the way they're telling me to do it, I'd have $50,000 to $100,000 tied up for up to 15 years before I even see a nickel back on that return. You know, what's some of the benefits? You know, the environmental benefits, of course, economical benefits, social benefits. I never really think that much of social benefits, but I really enjoy going out onto the farm and seeing those wildflowers in bloom with a bee on top of them. And so do the people that come to the farm to visit. There's a lot of social benefit to it as well. You know, this is busy. I know it is. Environmental benefits, biodiversity and conservation. You know, we've been talking about biodiversity a lot the last 3 days, how important it is. Carbon sequestration. The trees absorb the carbon dioxide and they store in the root mass. We've talked about that. Improving soil health. That's kind of where I'm at. Let me see, I've been here 4 years now, and I believe it was the second time that I come down, somebody asked me what I thought of silvopasture is. And I'm going to eat crow today. I told them that I didn't really care that much for silvopasture. And the reason being for that was we're in the hardwood capital of the world. If we start cutting down high-quality timber to integrate livestock into it, there could be a little bit of you can actually make more money if you have high-quality hardwoods grown versus cutting your hardwoods down and then trying to integrate livestock into it. So that's what I was meaning whenever I wasn't. And as I learn with the biodiversity, the more we need it. With the improved soil health, one of the things that we have some small silvopasture plots on our farm that, I always start small. If I think about something, I always start small. And one of the things that was my biggest problem with silvopasture is water. The water comparison, the larger trees using more water than the grasses and causing them not to do well. that happens quite a bit with large, mature trees. You know, you get a white oak standing in the middle of, a 4-foot cross white oak standing in a cornfield, the whole drip line around that oak tree, the plants are going to be small. That tree probably should be harvested before it goes hollow or it's worthless. So that's where the water consumption comes up. But however, if you're integrating that in there, I don't want to say correctly, but in a certain way, you're actually conserving water and you have a higher grass growth or higher forage growth. I've seen this firsthand. The silvopasture that I have started on my farm, it's relatively small. I've almost seen double production on that this year. Almost double the production that I would normally see in an actual field. The grass it's almost like they're on steroids. I mean, they grow. We put the sheep across there, 10 days later, it's already grown this much, and the grass is dark green, it's lush, everything's so nice in there, but there's so many different woody species involved with that. So, those woody species are actually bringing those funguses to the plate as well, and those funguses are helping with moisture as well too. Our water quality, we know we don't want to have runoff off the farm. That's for the other types of farmers. Microclimate. I see a lot of microclimates on the farm, and you probably should be able to as well. It's really cool whenever you're out on the farm and you have a sward and the sward's bent over, it's 95 degrees out, and you pull that sward back and there's active earthworms and all kinds of insects. That's a microclimate, or a microenvironment, I guess you could call it as well. But adding the trees, that's actually going to create another microclimate. What are the economic benefits? It's going to increase productivity on your farm. It's going to diversify your income. What happens if I have beef cattle? Beef cattle prices are sky high if you're selling on the commodities market. I think it was over in Oklahoma someplace, there was 7-weight steers that were selling for $3.05 a pound. But I can almost guarantee you within the next couple years, they're going to be back down to 50, 60 cents. As the cattle population regains. They say that we have a shortage in cattle that is the reason what's driving the price up. How can anybody buy a steer for $3.05 and sell the meat on a commodities market and actually just make any money? It's not going to happen. Timber production. We can plant silvopasture for timber production. Part of my silvopasture, or a portion of my silvopasture, is for timber production, specifically for black walnut production. It's something that I've always wanted. I have some small plots of walnut trees, and the cows and the squirrels have actually helped me get some others planted. I probably have about 700 walnut trees that we've planted on the farm. And what I'm going to do with some of those, they're too thick. I think Greg said 15 to 20 per acre, somewhere in that neighborhood. I probably got 700 per acre, so if I cut them down to, over time as they grow, if I cut them down to the 15, 20 per acre, I should have veneer quality trees growing there. And veneer is the highest money that you'll make off any of your trees. If you keep them trimmed up, they're nice and straight, there's no knots in them, no rot in the center, they're going to make timber production. And you say, well, my phone told me the other day I was older, so trees are very slow growing, right? I don't ever expect to harvest those trees for timber. I am building a future for my kids, and that being their retirement or my grandkids' retirement one day. And we're going to have reduced input costs. A lot of folks are building silvopasture for shade, windbreaks. There's a lot of different things. You know, shelter. One of the silvopasture guys there, he's talking about the living barns. He plants like he'll plant like a square of white pines and evergreens in like a rectangle or a square. Whenever the weather gets bad, those animals will go in there and they'll shade up. So he calls that a living barn. So it kind of, you know, the social benefits. You know, you're going to improve your livestock welfare. You know, you're going to make them a lot more comfortable for shade. I'm still not an advocate for putting the livestock in shade. I'm a firm believer of adapting your livestock for your environment. Is there times that you're going to have to go to shade, that we have huge temperature spikes that we normally don't have? Yes. This year, fortunately, we did not go to shade at all. Not one time did I take my livestock back to shade this year. And I realize it's hotter down here, it's more humid down here, but there is livestock breeds and there's things that are the animals that can adapt to that. Enhance quality of life. You know, it's more appealing. It's really nice. I don't know. We're farmers. We grow things. We love working with living things. Community engagement. I don't know how many times the people drive down the road and they'll stop and say, hey, what's that yellow flower in your field? Or they'll say, hey, what's that purple flower in your field? Or what's that tree that's coming up? And you're going to be more resilient, whether you believe in climate change or not. We are having extreme weather changes. The weatherman was not calling for 2 inches of rain one night, and I messed a paddock up because of it. You know, 2 inches of rain in an hour, and the weatherman, people are calling for 0% chance of rain. So, you know, resilient to the, let's not call it climate change, just resilient to the extreme weather events. Silvopasture is, sorry Alan, sustainable land management practice. And I'm with Alan on this. I don't really particularly care for the sustainable word either, but in these cases I didn't really know what to put in. Maybe I should put regenerative in there, right? Yeah. So maybe perhaps we'll start using regenerative versus sustainable in the future. It's cost-effective farming. One of the things that I really want to bring you guys in this presentation is we're not putting silvopasture in for $100,000. You know, if we have silvopasture, it's going to reduce the need for feed, but don't only select trees just for forage feed for the livestock. Make sure you have them for another income source of some sorts. It's going to help with, as the trees grow up, there's been new, I don't want to say technologies because it's not really technologies, new techniques of using live trees for fence posts. Live trees on a corner post is a lot better than just a corner post, I think. And if we're able to put those insulators on those trees in such a way that the trees can still expand without them getting caught up into the tree, that gives lesser investment into those fences. Whenever I built my farm, fencing was $1.20 a foot. The last I heard, you can hardly touch it for less than $3 or $4 a foot. I don't. Okay, I haven't priced it. I don't know. So I don't know if I'd have the fencing that I have today if I had to pay $4 a foot for it. I don't know if I can justify it. long-term savings. It can be regenerative. It can be regenerative and cost-effective, but it's over a long period of time. You know, for a walnut tree, trees in my area, they grow very fast. You can harvest a saw log out of a walnut tree in anywhere from 50 to 60 years. That's about. Now there is other trees, such as some of your hybrid poplars and stuff like that, that you can harvest the timber out of it quicker. However, it's not worth what a walnut tree is. When I was growing up as a kid, walnut was $1 a board foot standing on a stump. Today, black walnut trees are worth $4 a foot standing on the stump. That's pretty good. Now, they're still not worth $1 million like a lot of folks think. You know, they have a black walnut tree this big around and they want $2,000 or $3,000 for it. In reality, there's only about 100 board feet in that tree, so that tree is worth about $400. Utilizing existing resources. You know, we want to maximize our land use. I guess this is our next transition into our regenerative, is maximizing our land use. We already maximize it as far as I could go before coming to this point. I guess it's an evolution. But incorporating those trees alongside the livestock for forage is important as well, as we know. Feeding stored inputs is extremely costly. That's why over time, we're well over a 300-day grazing on a 9-year average. On 9 years, over the past 9 years, we're well over 100 days of grazing. I think it's like a 307, somewhere in that neighborhood. It might be 309. I can't remember the number, but it's just over for a 9-year average. I think that's fairly respectable, isn't it? Yeah, I would say. When the average farmer around me, the average farm gets 160 grazing days. So the rest of the time he's feeding hay. In 160 grazing days, I would hope that you folks are able to get past the 160 grazing days pretty easily. You know, if we have those trees growing, and you know, we're gonna increase the value of the land and reusing trees. If you have existing trees, you're integrating the livestock into the timber or the trees. And the other way that we're working with now, we are going to be integrating livestock into the existing trees. Because I have 90 acres of woods that I sell for timber, or I do timber management on. However, a good portion of that has been high graded over the past 50, 100 years, ever how long they've been pulling saw logs off of that. And if you don't know what high grading is, it's where they go in and they cut the high quality trees down. They do this generation after generation. They keep cutting these high quality. What would happen if you guys took your sheep or your cows and you sold all the ones that bred up the quickest? You know, those are the ones that you sold out of your herd. The next thing you know, you're going to have a really poor herd that's not going to be any good. And it's the same thing with the trees. I have a lot of red maple, a lot of cherry. The cherry's disease, black cherry. And we also have a lot of red oak and white oak. And from them selecting the high quality trees, the cherries all got gum on the top. The white oaks are dying. The red oaks they're doing pretty well. The black oaks are doing pretty well. But we have black birch as well coming in there. And it's actually black birch is considered an invasive tree because it will come in and it will just suffocate everything else. It's kind of like if somebody had out in their field, if they had a patch of Canadian thistle and there was no biodiversity there. It's kind of how it works with the black birch. So there is ways that we're going to be able to manage that by integrating the livestock in there. whenever you're selecting trees, I see tons of these trees down here. Is there a lot of trees, tree of heaven down here? That's what I thought. We see tree of heaven up in the northern parts. It's kind of ironic that these tree of heaven, you see them within the 30 or 40, 50 miles of the large cities, to where they've used these trees as landscape, and they've gotten out of the landscaping. I don't have any on my farm, but say Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You get close, the closer you get to Pittsburgh, the more you see them and we know that the tree of heaven is not probably the best species to be selecting for anyhow because of the toxicity of it. So that's not necessarily a plant that you're going to want to plant. And you have to, the barberry and some of these other ones, the wing-euonymus, the burning bush, and some of those other ones are the native species. We want to kind of concentrate on native species. We've been working with native species on my farm for a long time now. I guess maybe not that long, but it's been at least 10, 12 years. And we've done dry matter yields. We've actually went out and clipped pastures to see what was available, what the livestock consumed. One field we had 9.5 tons of available, of forage for our livestock. That's not including what we were leaving behind. We had 9.5 tons for the livestock. Another one of the warm season grass fields, we had 12 tons. That is tremendous, and why are those plants so productive? They're adapted to our soils. We want plants that are adapted. It doesn't make any sense to plant alfalfa, go out there, have to put 10 tons of lime on the field, and then put a whole bunch of boron and all those inputs whenever you can plant a plant that's going to actually be more productive in the long run. One of the things that we're struggling with, this is one of our little walnut trees. Whenever you have a non-selective herd or a non-selective flock, it's really tough trying to get these guys fenced out. This here's tighter than what I normally do it, but I have them scattered out through the field, and sometimes I'll have them daisy chained, 20, and I can't put tree tubes out in the middle of the field because those there are rubbing posts. But those cows, they can reach underneath that fence with those big old long tongues, grab a hold of that stem, pull it in, and take all those leaves and the top year's growth right off the top of those. However, I have been able to trick them enough that I think that I've been able to trick them enough to leave us with our 15 or 20 out of our 400. It's more, but what's it? Tree species selection. Contact a local expert. I would contact a local expert that has experience with silvopasture. I wouldn't contact the local forester or somebody else that has no clue. At home, they would tell me, well, when I first thought about silvopasture 15 years ago, I had the state forester out on the farm, and he really didn't have a clue what he was talking about. So if you're looking for experts, seek somebody that knows something about it. What's your livestock compatibility? Some trees are better for some livestock than other trees. Growth rate, some trees are very, very slow growing. And the slower growing trees do not compete with the forages. Because whenever you establish these, they're going to tell you to go out there and spray the Roundup and then put wood chips down on top of that and then plant your tree in the center of that. Whenever you're doing that with thousands of trees, it's very, very hard. You want diversity, soil adaptation, erosion control, and what are your long-term goals? One of my long-term goals is to create a retirement for my children. That's one of my long-term goals. My daughter, when she goes out with me, she gets mad now. It actually gets them involved with the farm, and she sees where a cow eats one of her black walnut trees. She'll say, that darn thing ate my black walnut tree, like it was hers. So these are the species. We've got 1,600 trees planted so far. These are all the species that we have planted, some more than others. And a lot of these were actually free trees. They were actually going to be thrown out. I don't know if you've heard of the 10 million tree project in the state of Pennsylvania, where they want to plant 10 million trees by, I think it's 2025 or 2027, somewhere in that neighborhood. Well, I took all the trees that nobody wanted. There was about 6 of us that took the trees that nobody wanted. A lot of those trees died, unfortunately, because the folks that was handling them didn't have any experiences with trees, and you know as well as I do, live plants need water. Well, let's take a bare root plant, throw it in the back of the van, and haul it 200 miles in the sun, and then when we get it there, we take and put the root in 2 inches of water whenever you have a root system that's this long. So a lot of them did die. However, I did get a lot of free ones out of it. I did buy some. I bought lots of cuttings. Cuttings is an inexpensive way of getting trees. These are cuttings. That was a free tree with lots of walnuts. I did buy the persimmons and the apples. The pawpaws I grew from seed, elderberries. Those darn things are all over the farm. If you put an elderberry on your farm and you give rest periods, you're going to have lots of elderberries. However, the cows crush them, so they're forage, and they're actually, I've never done a dry matter yield on them, but they have the potential of creating a lot of forage for those livestock, even though the toxicity in it. So that's just some of the plants. You know, choosing appropriate forage plants, you know, what's your adaptation, livestock preferences. Hopefully, as you increase and decrease livestock, maybe some of the natural, the selectivity of the livestock, hopefully that goes down. They'll start eating more species. It's pretty cool to hear a cow crunching on a hickory nut. My cows go along and they pick up hickory nuts and they crunch them down. It's pretty neat. So who would have thought a cow would eat hickory nuts? Certainly not me. What's the grow season? What's the tolerance to grazing? What if they get loose in there and they eat off the top of my walnuts? I'm hoping that they'll regrow. And some folks are growing some of these plants, like some of the willows and the poplars, for forage purposes, along with pulpwood. But the willows and the poplars are more tolerant to being cut off, and they'll regrow. And those soft tissue whips actually make great stockpile. Even though they're kind of woody and they're pretty high quality, I've seen tests of those little switches upwards to 27% crude protein. Seasonal resilience, you know, again, the extreme weather patterns that we have. Improved soil health. Of course, we always want good soil health because we know what soil health means. That means productivity with low inputs. Reduce pest pressure. I believe that having the biodiversity in and around my potato plants this year is what kept the potato bugs away. You're going to have reduced adaptation or climate adaptation, and you're going to be able to extend the grazing season. For a lot of small producers, that's a big deal. On my farm, if I'm feeding hay, it costs me $150 a day. So if I can extend that grazing season just one day, that's $150 in my pocket. But say we can extend it 10 days, say you're 200 and you're going to take it out to 210, it's cost you $150. That's a good chunk of change. We could go buy Allen's filet mignon then. You ask about my chicken tractors. Those are my chicken tractors. What types of livestock work well in a silvopasture? Cattle, sheep, goats, poultry, and silvopoultry. What's one that it's not listed on there? Pigs. I've had it, I don't know if Ryan's here or not, but we had an in-depth conversation with his experience with hogs. And me moving them every day possibly could have created the rooting problem, because they're finding whenever they go into a new paddock every day and they strip that carpet off, they know that there's worms, bugs, insects, and whenever you're establishing trees, the work and the time and the money you got involved, you don't want to go in and have a hog root those roots up. So just be careful if you're thinking about using hogs. Here's some of my silvopasture that we have started. Those are apple trees. Those in the back are honeyberries and blueberries. Your site preparation, they're going to recommend that you spray it with Roundup and then come in, put wood chips down, which wood chips we have lots and lots of wood chips to help suppress the weeds, because trees have a really hard time dealing with competition of other plants until they get established, and then it's the other way around. What types of forages are you going to plant in there? Grazing management, what kind of management? You need to think about that whenever you're establishing those or putting those trees in there, because whenever those trees are in there, they're in there. You're not going to want to pick them up and move them. So you're going to kind of want to have an idea how you're going to graze that and what your flexibilities are. Water access, that's a problem on all farms, whether it's silvopasture or not. Your weed control, and we learned that no plants are weeds. And, you want to keep records. Like these apple trees, we have 21 or 27 different varieties of apples that we planted this year. You want to actually do a map of your orchard. It's a good idea, even if you only have 10 trees, so you have that record whenever you get older like me. You don't forget what those are, or if you pass away or something, the kids know exactly what tree varieties they are. However, there is, I believe it's the University of Washington, you can send an apple tree sample in, they can do genetic testing on it and tell you what variety of apple it is. Irrigation, we did put irrigation in on our apple trees this year just for the sake of apple trees most generally need watered a lot in the first couple years. But we put the irrigation in and we used it 3 times this year. So, that's up to you. That's my son, he's down in the hole. We tapped into a water line. We have an extra hydrant now, basically. It costs us $500 to put it in. It's drip irrigation, just cheap black pipe laid on the top of the ground, and those drip emitters, they drip 1.8 liters per hour, and then we got to filter the water, and then we use pressure reducers. Is anybody using pressure reducers on their garden hoses? They work. If you're worried about garden hoses exploded, especially whenever it's hot out, put pressure reducer on it. The pressure reducer is designed not to interfere with the flow rate, but it does drop your pressure in your hoses, and you have less hoses explode, leak, or have garden hoses that look like anacondas by the end of the day when it gets to 90 degrees. $10. An expensive one is $17. Get a hold of your conservation districts. Tree tubes, these tree tubes here are $5 a piece. I got a hold of my conservation districts. I shook the bushes, and one of the ladies in one of the conservation districts, I contacted I don't know, 15 or 20 of them throughout the state. And she's like, well, I have a friend, I think she's got some tree tubes. She's got this business where she goes through and she picks these tree tubes up. They'd be seconds, but I think she wants to get rid of them. I said, cool, I'm there. So this truckload of tree tubes that I have, I figured it out. I brought home $13,000 worth of tree tubes for a half a day's work in the gas that it cost me to go 100 and some miles to pick them up. That was a pretty good deal. Free seed. This is one of those things for me that I've been planning since I've been a little kid. I've always wanted a tree nursery, so it's actually starting to happen. These are honey locusts. Some of those honey locust pods were 14, 16 inches long, that wide, 2.5, 3 inches, and then 1/4 of an inch thick. They're some of the biggest honey locust pods I've ever seen. It was from Downtown State College I got those. The municipal people were out raking them up, putting them in the garbage bags. They were going to send them off to the landfill. I said, hey, can I have some of those? Yeah, they give me 3 bags of honey locust pods, and I actually have the equipment that I built to thrash those seeds out of that. So I took them home. It took me a half an hour. I thrashed all those seeds out, and I got a 5-pound bag of honey locust seed that we can grow and turn them into little trees. I was a little hesitant to planting the seeds right out where the trees are going to be when the Silvopasture's finished, so I put them in a bed, and little trees do need watered. They do need watered because those little root systems just can't get down deep enough to be able to access water. You can buy nursery stock, but it's going to cost you a fortune. Those trees there, I have about 8 hours worth of labor in them. And that's including cleaning the seed. Growing beds, I am growing them in beds. Has anybody here graft trees? Anybody here have an orchard that they've planted? Pretty expensive orchard, right? Ryan's got an orchard in the back of his truck when he goes back to Wisconsin. Here's the honey locust at 3 months old in the bed. Black walnuts, you can harvest in black walnuts. Black walnuts and chestnuts are the two that I do. Those are acorns. Just take a tarp out, throw it underneath the oak tree, and you have acorn harvester. We'll call it an acorn harvester. There's the chestnuts that we've harvested. You can see how big my hand is, how big around those things are. They're huge. And last year when I was down here, we had it over at, the Forage camp. Well, I took home 2 bucketfuls of chestnuts over there that the folks were running in and out of the driveway. So those there, they need stratified, what they call stratification. So they have to go through a cold stratification. Some plants need to go through a fire in order to germinate. But walnuts, chestnuts, acorns, some acorns have to go through a stratification. If you're picking white oak acorns, they need planted immediately. They will not keep. These buckets are just buckets of sand. I put them in the sand, and you can see my little thief right here. I only have 2 lids, and the rest of the lids are gone. Well, he's taking them out, and we use them for frisbees. But we'll take those buckets, and then we bury them in wood chips. You don't want the wood chips too thick or too deep because of the heat from the wood chips, but it simulates them being into the ground, and it helps prevent them from freezing. And then you pull them out in the spring, they'll start germinating. You can pull them out, you can plant them directly where they're at, or you can put them in beds. Walnuts do not transplant very well because of their deep taproot. So it's my recommendation to plant those walnuts out in the field. And if you have a good workforce of squirrels, they do a really good job as well. I have walnut trees growing in places of my farm. It's like, what? How did that happen? How did that squirrel, or why would that squirrel, or why would that, what else is going to move a walnut? What's going to move a walnut from here clear to the other side of the farm other than a rodent of some sorts? Can't see a deer picking it up. White pines. We started some white pines this year. We got probably, I don't know, maybe 2,000 little white pine trees. We got them out in a nursery bed. 2,000 white pine trees cost me $31 in seed, and we have about 5, maybe 6 hours worth of labor planting them and then transplanting them. And there's 2 companies in the United States that I know of that sell a lot of tree seeds. They tell you where it's sourced at. They tell you what type it is. See, I got my ringer off this time. Instead, it went off on Alan. Here is Siberian pea brush. Here's some of the honey locusts that I have put in pots, because I've been giving them away to friends and family. And I told Alan wrong yesterday on the cost of a tree. I told him it was $3.65 with the labor. The labor is actually $3.65. Apple rootstock, $1.20. Cyanwood, if you buy the cyanwood, that's $2. $3.65 for labor, paying yourself $50 an hour. You need to pay yourself while you're on your farm. You don't work for nothing. Your time is worth something. The graft takes approximately 2.4 minutes. Aftercare, another 2 minutes. So we have 4.4 minutes in there. So we have 83 cents in the labor. And so our total tree cost with cyanwood, which usually you can source cyanwood for free, is $6.85. Can you buy apple trees for $6.85 anywhere? I don't think so. Don't let grafting intimidate you. A lot of folks say, well, I can't do that. Grafting is a very easy technique and a very easy way to do fruit trees. I'm going to show you this in a little bit, but this here's a graft that I was just proving a point to how easy it is to do. Here's the rootstock that we buy. We bought a 200 rootstock. We ended up with 217, and we ended up with 214 grafts that took out of 217 trees. But whenever you cut these tops off, don't throw them away. This is our cyanwood. I went to the neighbors, and you collect this whenever the trees are dormant, and make sure you mark them what varieties they are. This top one is actually a peach. But mark your varieties, and then you'll take them and you'll put them in the refrigerator until you're ready to use them. You want to put them in a Ziploc bag. Here's the tools for grafting. I did buy some cyanwood because it wasn't available. This here's one of my favorites. We used to call it King of Thompson, but it's actually Tompkins King. A good grafting knife is very important. However, you can use a utility knife to do your grafting, but you get better cuts because of the bevel. It's a one bevel-sided knife. Can be dangerous, so you need to be very, very careful whenever you're cutting, because this knife blade, I could shave with it. It's that sharp. And if you can use carbon steel will sharpen up and take an edge better than a stainless steel blade. We use the whip and tongue graft, or is what it's called, a lot. We use the whip and tongue graft, and then here's a cleft graft. If you have 2 different size pieces of material, here's the scion. We just split that. We cut a wedge on the scion. We stick it down in. And the way these grafts are successful is you got to match those cambium layers up. It's the green layer just underneath the bark. They have to match up. There's my daughter. She helped me with that part of the process. She did all the painting. We had a blast. We sat down in my office. We listened to her music. I have a television. I have Wi-Fi in my office down in the barn. We let her listen to the music, and we had a good old time. Make sure they're marked. These are two of my favorites, the Tompkins King and the Red Astrakhan. Two very good old-time apples. Those there are the ones, they're just breaking dormancy there. Here's a graft that's healed. And then here's growth in probably about 30 days. And then this here picture was taken approximately 2 weeks ago. That tree tube is 5 feet tall, and those trees are poking out of the tops of those tree tubes in less than, they've only been in the ground since around the end of May, somewhere in that neighborhood. So they have the opportunity to grow very, very fast. But those tops off of those root cuttings I told you to not throw out and save, you take them outside, you stick them in the ground, put 4 inches of sawdust around them, and they root, and you have free root stock. To stick them in the ground and put the sawdust on, it didn't take but 2 hours. But we have all these trees that are available as rootstocks next year that we don't have to buy. Are all of them going to grow? No, not even close. But we still have, out of those 200, we probably have 75 that had grown roots. As I said before, we need to keep our roots moist. Rooting gel is imperative in order to be successful. That's why we didn't have to water as much this year. We dip them in a rooting gel. You're going to try and reduce labor, get the whole family involved. My kids, they had a blast with this project. There's my $100 trailer that I built out of a livestock gate, and it has a fence jumper on it. We can still run over our fences and not get hung up. Those are some of the trees that we planted. The rooting gel. It's a gel that's inoculated with mycorrhizae fungi. It's not the inoculation that I feel that makes it get these trees started good. I believe it's the gel because of the ability to hold water. Here's my son. He's taller than I am now. He's 13 years old. As you know, I'm cheap. I bought a cheap 18-volt drill, or a hole drill. That little thing did a tremendous job. Could you imagine digging holes for 200 apple trees? Him and we planted those 2 apple trees in approximately 12 hours. So we had 24 hours of labor of planting all those trees using that little drill. That thing was slick. He had more trouble. You can see the line there. He had more trouble trying to keep it exactly. We planted them on 10-foot spacings, and he had a hard time. It had to be right exactly 10 foot. It took him longer to figure out 10 feet than what it did to drill the hole. But we had a blast doing it. Get your family involved. There's my kids when they were smaller. Do a cost-benefit analysis whenever you do silvopasture because of the cost of it. Try to find different ways to do it for lesser money. I know there's government programs out there. I'm not taking those government programs to do my silvopasture, but there is programs out there. Do you guys have ACAP down here with your conservation districts? Up my way, they just got ACAP in the conservation districts, and they got, I forget how many millions of dollars, and all the conservation districts are scrambling to try and give this money away. And they're giving it for heavy use areas, manure pits, anything agriculture. You submit a thing, and they'll write up a plan and give you your money. Silvopasture doesn't always only provide cost-effective farming approach. It maximizes the utilization of existing resources. You're growing your farm up versus growing your farm out. I know a farmer one time, he called himself a farmer, and he was selling microgreens, had half an acre. He made $110,000 farming that half acre. So to me, growing up is better than growing out. There's my one source there. And then questions? Do we have many?
Here we go.
Times, we've got about 6 minutes, right, Mike? Yeah.
My
Yes.
walnut trees, I have trouble growing grass under them. About the only
Yes,
thing-
walnut trees can have the tendency to be allelopathic. Jugalone is the toxin that's in walnut trees, and it's been known to cause problems. It can cause laminitis in horses if they're walking on those walnuts. I have not seen that. I have I would say I have a section as large as this room, and it probably has 200 walnut trees in it, and I have not had that problem. The grasses are beautiful, and
Yeah, I was wondering, what have you done to, something different or?
and maybe it's the animal impact. But you're right, a lot of times like pine trees and some of the walnut trees, yeah, they can have some allelopathic tendencies. Yes, sir.
Not really a question, but a comment on the Tree of Heaven. In Virginia, the Department of Forestry has been encouraging us, if you have Tree of Heaven, cut them down and get rid of them because of the lanternfly, spotted lanternfly that's coming in. That's the host plant, and then what that bug is doing is attacking the native maples and killing them. So if you have them, they're saying get rid of them at all costs.
Well, in that aspect, if it's attracting the spotted, we have them up in our area as well. If the spotted lanternfly is attacking the Tree of Heaven, it's not attacking another tree.
It's the host that comes in those, and it doesn't stay there, then it goes to the
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we definitely have it, and back, I seen the spotted lanternfly on my farm about a year before it was supposed to be in our area.
Other questions?
2 questions. I must have done a good job.
Boy, you did. You did. There we go.
Okay, let's hear it.
Speaking of mistakes.
I was just curious how many blueberries you have. You had talked a little bit about blueberries.
Oh yeah, we have 100 blueberries that I purchased. There's a lot of times it's cheaper to buy things in bulk than it is to buy 3 or 4, 5. We paid $2.85, I believe, for our blueberry bushes. $2.85 a piece. It may have been $1.60. I'm not sure. It was in that neighborhood. By buying 100, I could save a bunch of money. If you buy blueberry bushes, they're usually $10 to $20 a piece. And some of those bushes that we planted this year actually had berries on them.
Did you go straight to the ground?
Excuse me?
Did you go straight to the ground?
Yeah. It's like strawberries. You can buy 500 strawberry plants for what you can buy 50 plants for. So why not buy 100 versus buy? So yeah, we have, and I'm going to probably put another 100 blueberries in this coming year. And they won't be grown in pots.
I had a question, Russ, for you on, do you implement Silvopasture in existing forests?
Yes,
Or
yes.
how do you do that, was my question.
Well, naturally, we got to work and get the daylight to the soil. Integrating your livestock into an existing system. Do we have brush in there? Do we have different things? We may have to put goats in there, or maybe hogs to root some of those tree roots out. But like Greg said the other day, we got to have sunlight hitting the soil in order for grass to grow. So you're going to probably have to do some thinning. Greg said 15 to 20. The guy up there with me, his recommendation is 40 mature trees. So there is So if you look, if you were to count the trees per acre on a good, healthy forest, there's literally thousands and thousands of trees on per acre. So you're going to need to do some thinning, make sure you have proper fences, and, you know, make sure you're rested as well as, you know, whenever you're grazing it. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm very neutral here, but the timber buyers and the foresters I know dislike or have a fit if the woods has ever been pastured.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I explained that to you. Used to be whenever they had woods pastured, and that was one of my pet peeves as well. I did not like to cut timber that was in pasture fields. And the reason being for that is, back in the old day and still today, they're in a continuous system. There's a patch of woods. Whenever it gets hot, they go to that patch of woods and they hang out for the majority of the day. And whenever they do that, they poop and pee, and you know, they do all that good cow stuff that should be done out here on the paddocks. But whenever they do that, they put what we call as mineral. We put mineral in the tree. Okay, so what it does, that tree sucks up all those nutrients, and then causes rings in specific years of growth. It'll cause a black ring. In cherry, we've seen it a lot in cherry, maple, and oak. It'll cause a black ring in it. Whenever you get that black ring, the quality of that tree, it can be the nicest tree, no knots, nothing. You know, it would be a veneer log, but all of a sudden it became blocking because it had those black mineral streaks. That's the way your foresters and timber buyers don't like trees that were pastured. Yeah, that's going to eliminate the mineral in the trees because your livestock are not standing there all the time, you know, transporting nutrients out of your field into your woods. You know, ideally, you want that manure out in your fields where it's going to do you the best. You know, if I have to move cows to shade, it's usually only for 1 or 2 hours out of a day. You know, it's from like 1 to 3 o'clock. I'll move the cows or the sheep and the sheep, we just drag a wagon out. If it gets that hot, we'll drag a wagon out and they can get shade underneath the wagon. But the cows, if I have 2 hours, most generally it's 2 hours, and then they're back out. So they're not really putting a lot of nutrients into the woods.
According to what my cousin told me, he logs timber, and well, you know, if you have cattle around a tree constantly, they're going to hurt the roots of that tree also.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you're going to get dead spots in that tree. It's going to damage that tree. And I've seen some that he cut that was excellent grade white oak, except they was dead spots in that tree, in the wood. So it destroyed the value of the log, which the cattle was there constantly. It was in a continuous grazing. It was just set stocking. And so essentially they will destroy trees due to that.
Yeah,
so
I have seen that. You know, whenever your roots branch out from a tree, certain roots branches feed certain parts of those trees. So whenever those cows get in there, they stand all the time and they compact those root systems. They essentially kill part of that tree doing that, yes.
Okay, anybody else? All right, Russ,
Okay.
thank you very much. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. And we'll take a 15-minute break.